Hi everyone, welcome back to battlingpd.com. As always, we are here with Dan Brasher. Say hello.
Hey.
His wife Cindi Brasher.
Hi.
Say hello. And your host Andrew Brasher behind the camera. Hello. Last week we talked about a little bit of the story before and after the diagnosis of Parkinson's with the family, the church, your guys' farm, things of that nature. This week we decided to kind of discuss. We'll start out with medication. This might lead into other things, but we wanted to talk about specifically what's the name of the medication.
Propranolol.
And kind of the history we had with that, things we found out about it and its effect with Parkinson's. So, Dad, why don't you just kind of start us off, talk about how you got that pill and what you found to be an effect or side effect, if you will, of that pill.
Yeah, when I got diagnosed with Parkinson's initially, back in January of 2012, the doctor told me that I had Parkinson's and something else, and they didn't know for sure what something else was. Now, the reason that they thought I had something else as well was because the Parkinson's, it seemed as though I had a lot of cognitive deterioration. That means I didn't think quickly. I kind of fuzzed out. I would go in and out of conversations.
You'd make decisions you wouldn't usually make as well.
Well, yeah, I was making...
Had a hard time tying up loose ends of information in order to make a solid decision, whereas you've been a decision maker your entire life.
Right.
And this is one of the reasons that it eventually became easier for me to make the decision to leave the full-time ministry, because I realized as a senior pastor I was making serious decisions regarding the life and the well-being of a church full of people, and my decision-making ability was impaired. So that was a dangerous thing, and wrong decisions hurt people. So I had to make the decision to quit making decisions that were going to affect a lot of other people, because I was not in a situation to do that. Anyway, they thought I had something else, and they couldn't figure out what it was. They ran a lot of tests, CAT scans on my brain, a lot of different tests. But what they eventually determined was that the reason I was having cognitive problems was because it was the impact of the long-term usage of propranolol. Now, the doctor had given me the propranolol to help me with the hand tremor, but eventually that medication, one of the side effects is if you take it long term, it can lead to depression and confusion, and it attacks your cognitive.
Two questions.
Functions.
So when you took it, did it actually help with the tremor at all?
It did.
Initially.
It did at first.
Mom, did you see that as well?
Yeah, it helped initially, but over time, it just wasn't doing enough, and so they doubled the dosage. The doctor doubled. This was our primary care physician. He doubled the dosage. I believe propranolol was initially a blood pressure medication, but they found that it had an impact on tremors. It quieted tremors, and so probably a year into that prescription, they doubled his dosage.
And at some point, so my understanding is at some point you guys began to wonder if what we were seeing were side effects of that medication.
Right.
So when did you guys decide, or how did it look when you decided to go investigate that as an option or possibility?
Actually, what happened, I had largely, due to our primary care physician constantly assuring us that there was nothing going on with Dan's medication, that nothing that he was experiencing could be in any way influenced by his medications. I largely just dismissed that as a possibility. So,
And he was wrong. He was wrong, and we took his word
For years.
For
this
3 years.
because he was a doctor.
Right.
And I want to say right now, doctors have been a great help to me
Yes.
in dealing with Parkinson's, but you cannot afford to just take the word
True.
of a doctor because they've got a degree. You've got one of the best things that's happened in all of this situation has been the fact that Cindi has become an aggressive advocate for me, questioning medical decisions, questioning doctors, searching the internet, looking for answers. And that's what led us to go to the neurologist in the first place. But then when they couldn't figure out what was causing the secondary symptoms, we eventually got our referral to go see a specialist down in Atlanta at Emory University, Dr. Alexander.
Deals specifically with Parkinsonism.
He deals
good guy.
And so the very first time we met with him, we were talking about all this, and he asked me what medications I was on. And so we gave him a list of all the medications. He took one look at the list and said immediately, "Why are you taking propranolol?" And so I explained to him why we took it, what the doctor had said, and he told me, he said, "Well, I want you to stop taking that, and I want you to do it immediately."
Now, what's important about that is that any medications that you're on and you've been on long term, you are never supposed to stop cold turkey. Generally, they cut your medications a little at a time until you're off. This medication in particular, I had read online, was something that shouldn't be stopped cold turkey. And Dr. Alexander said, "Stop taking it today. Have you had a dose this morning?" Dan said yes. He said, "Don't take another dose." Now, the thing that's so important about this is Dan had just begun to blog, and our son Andrew is a techie for sure. He's got his black belt in technology, and he had kind of set Dan up to blog, and Dan would ask me to edit his blogs. And I have to tell you honestly, during this year of what we refer to as the propranolol haze, his blogs were so simplistic. They were very hard to read, and they were full of errors.
And that's not normal for Dan.
Not
I mean, keeping in
normal.
mind, a pastor for years, a salesman for years,
Yes.
a manager for years. What did you studied English, didn't you?
I was an English
Major at the Citadel University.
Yeah.
If anything, very good, very articulate, very good writer, very good with words, and that was a big shift.
Yes. And so I had gotten to where I kind of dreaded reading his blogs because I felt like I was discouraging him week after week. And so we had our initial visit with Dr. Alexander. He said, "Stop propranolol immediately. Don't take another dose." Dan called me the next day from the coffee shop where he wrote, and he said, "Honey, can you go in the house and read the blog that I've just posted and tell me what you think of it?" And I kind of sighed. I wasn't looking forward to reading the blog, but I told him I would, and I'd call him right back. I read it, and I was astounded at the clarity that he was able to achieve in this blog. And so I called him back, and I said, "Where did you get this material?" And he said, "What do you mean? I wrote it." And I said, "No, I mean, where did you get the information that you copied for the blog?" And he said, "I didn't copy the information, Cindi. I wrote the blog." Well, I actually started to cry. I'm a crier, but I immediately started to cry. Knew instantly that it was the result of coming off of propranolol, this horrific fog that Dan had been in for so long, and it was really impenetrable. You yourself described it as feeling like you were in a fog.
Yes.
You were struggling to try to come out of it, and you just couldn't really.
And it affected
your way through.
relationships
Everything.
pretty solidly. I mean, I know
It was
we were all
brutal.
working together at Rock Church, and you were managing a lot of people in the process, and you were having a hard time, like, just communicating and sustaining those relationships just because you were kind of fogging out. Now,
Well, I had noticed that there were times when I'd be meeting with people, visiting with them, having a discussion with them, and it was like while I was in the midst of the discussion, I would go away for a while. That's just the best way I can describe it.
go on about that a little bit.
And-
Can you go into that at all? What that is to go away for a little while? Is
Well,
that something you
It
can?
was just like, I've heard people describe when they died and
An out-of-body experience.
out of body experience. They died, their spirit went to heaven, and they came back to life, and their spirit came back to their body. It was a similar it was a similar feeling. It was like I was talking to somebody, but then it was like I was watching myself talk to somebody.
And you were conscious of that experience?
Yes, I had become conscious of it recently. It's one of the reasons why I was open to go see the neurologist, because I was realizing that something was wrong, and this scared me, because I was used to being engaged. I really believe it's very important to try to live in the now, and I want to be present in every situation, whether it's a conversation with a colleague, whether it's playing with a grandchild, whether it's watching the football game, whatever I'm doing, I want to be in the moment. I want to be fully involved in the moment. And I was realizing that I wasn't able to be fully involved. And I got to tell you, the day I quit taking the propranolol, a lot changed right then. It was like I was walking, I'd been in the fog, and it was like the fog was lifting.
So, real briefly, just to wrap that up, so if you both, in under a minute maybe, could say, if you have someone else watching this who's been diagnosed, they're using that medication, is there any advice you would give them directly based on what your experience was?
I do want to say that not everyone using propranolol has the same impact, doesn't have the same impact on everyone that it had on Dan specifically. But I would say whatever medications you're on, anything that you're experiencing that can't be explained as a symptom or side effect of Parkinson's, that needs to be investigated. Your medications interact with each other. There's a long-term impact for many people on any medication that they're on. If there's anything that is plaguing you that cannot be explained to you by your doctor, insist that they investigate the side effects of the medications that you're on.
The best thing to do is ask a lot of questions. When I first got diagnosed with Parkinson's, there were several treatment options available as far as medications they could start me with. And the reason we decided to start with, they started out with Cinnamon. And the reason we started out with Cinnamon instead of starting with some other more current medications, which Cinnamon is what they've been treating it with for years. But instead of starting with a more current medication, we use that because it had less drastic side effects. Yeah. And side effects are a critical issue. So ask a lot of questions. Medications tend to hurt people when you're on them long term. Propranolol did not have a negative impact on me in the very beginning, but after years, it eventually had some side effects that were very negative, but they happened gradually.
So, Mom, as Dad pointed out, and we'll wrap it on your thoughts here, but you became the advocate, right, in this process, which is kind of it almost sounds like a real need for someone who's been diagnosed with Parkinson's to actually have someone be an advocate. Yeah. So just as brief as you can, in under a minute for sure, just kind of what would you say to those who are the advocate for their partner or their relative or their loved one with Parkinson's?
Be relentless. I don't care what the issue is, cancer, heart disease, I don't care what it is. If you are in relationship with someone that has any type of chronic illness, be aggressive in getting answers. Don't let doctors shut you down, ignore you. If you need to, change doctors until you find someone that will listen, because nobody knows your person like you know them. Nobody loves them like you love them. And it is imperative that all of us have someone that is an advocate for our health, another set of eyes, another set of ears, and for sure, another mouth.
I want to end today with one thing.
We're out of time, and Mom's was a good ending.
Okay.
So, and this made me think of something. What we need to do, I want to do trade-offs. I don't want it to feel like, this isn't because it's doesn't just affect you, the whole site, right?